You are a commander standing on the edge of the vast Ukrainian steppe in 1362. To your south lies the most terrifying military machine in human history, the Golden Horde. To the north is the safety of the forests you just left behind. Most kings in this position would be drunk in their tents, drowning the terror of the coming battle in wine. But your leader, Grand Duke Algirdas, sits by the fire, stone-cold sober. He refuses the cup. He stares into the flames with a terrifying intensity, guarding his strategy so closely that he snaps at anyone who asks for the plan. He famously growled, "If my beard knew what I was thinking, I would rip it out right now." This obsession with secrecy is the only reason your army is still alive. You have marched hundreds of miles into the belly of the Mongol Empire undetected, poised to strike the blow that will shatter history at the Battle of Blue Waters. Before diving into these forgotten stories of survival and suffering, if you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this, and please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared curiosity about the past. We're watching a high-stakes gamble unfold in real time. To understand the sheer audacity of this moment, you must realize that for the last century, the Golden Horde has been the apex predator of the known world. They are the western wing of the Mongol Empire, the descendants of Genghis Khan who turned the sophisticated cities of Russia into graveyards and forced princes to lick boots for the right to rule. In 1362, they are the superpower that no European army dares to meet in the open field. But Algirdas is not a typical European king. He is the Grand Duke of Lithuania, the ruler of the last pagan empire on the continent. While the rest of Europe is busy dying from the Black Death or burning heretics, Algirdas is building a war machine designed for one purpose: expansion. He does not play by the rules of chivalry. He plays to win. He sees what others miss. The Golden Horde is bleeding. The superpower is sick. A civil war known as the Magna Turbatio, the Great Troubles, is tearing the Mongol leadership apart. Over 20 Khans have murdered each other for the throne in just 2 decades. The central authority of the steppe has collapsed into a violent free-for-all. Warlords like Kutlug Bey, Haji Bey, and Dmitri have carved out their own fiefdoms in the western steppes, growing fat on tribute but weak on unity. They believe they are safe. They believe the forest barbarians of Lithuania would never dare cross the tree line into the open grasslands. Algirdas bets his entire kingdom on proving them wrong. He mobilizes his forces with a speed that defies medieval logistics. This is not a slow, lumbering crusade with baggage trains and camp followers. This is a lightning raid scaled up to the size of an invasion. His army is a hybrid force of heavy cavalry and light, mobile infantry. They move fast, striking targets before the smoke from the previous village has even cleared. The objective is Kiev. The ancient capital of the Rus people has languished under the Tatar Yoke for over 100 years. Its capture would not just be a territorial gain, it would be a geopolitical earthquake. It would signal to the world that the Mongols are no longer invincible, but to take Kiev, Algirdas must first break the armies that guard it. He pushes his men relentlessly south. They leave the familiar swamps and thickets of Lithuania, crossing into the wild fields. This is hostile territory. The terrain itself is an enemy. The tall grass hides Tatar scouts. The open sky offers no cover from the eyes of the enemy. Every mile they march brings them closer to the inevitable collision. The genius of Algirdas lies in his assessment of risk. He knows the Tatars rely on fear and mobility. He counters this with discipline and intelligence. While the Mongol warlords bicker amongst themselves, arguing over loot and titles, Algirdas is already inside their defence perimeter. He cuts off their communication lines. He seizes key outposts. He forces the 3 rival Khans to stop their infighting and scramble to face a common threat. By the time the Mongol leaders realize the scale of the invasion, Algirdas is already at the Sinivodi, the Blue Waters. He has chosen the battlefield. He has dictated the terms of engagement. He has forced the masters of mobile warfare into a defensive posture. This is the moment the world changes. The old map of Eastern Europe drawn by Mongol hooves and Russian blood is about to be torn up. The Grand Duke tightens his grip on the reins. He looks out across the river at the gathering storm of the Horde. There are no speeches. There is no fanfare. There is only the signal to advance. The wolf of the north has come to hunt. To appreciate the scale of the monster Algirdas is hunting, you have to look at the map of 1362 through the eyes of a terrified European. For over a century, the Golden Horde has not just been a kingdom, it has been a force of nature. It is the western Eulus of the Mongol Empire, a colossus stretching from the Danube River to the deep freeze of Siberia. Its shadow covers the Russian principalities, enforcing the Tatar Yoke, a system of dominance so complete that Russian princes are forced to travel to the Khan's court, bow their heads to the ground, and beg for the Yarlik, the patent to rule their own people. The Horde is the wealthiest, most militarily advanced state in the region. But zoom in closer to the encampments near the mouth of the Dnieper River, and you see the cracks in the armour. The Golden Horde is dying of a self-inflicted disease. Historians call this period the Magna Turbatio, the Great Troubles. It is a 20-year nightmare of succession crises that turned the ruling family into a viper's nest. Since 1357, the throne of the Horde has changed hands more times than the seasons. Khans are not dying of old age. They are dying of poison, daggers, and silk strangulation cords. In just 2 decades, nearly 24 claimants have seized power, only to be murdered by the next ambitious relative. The central nervous system of the empire has been severed. This political hemorrhage has disastrous consequences for the periphery. With the capital in Sarai consumed by civil war, the western territories, the lands bordering Lithuania and Poland, have effectively gone rogue. They are ruled not by a single unified Great Khan, but by warlords acting as kings. Enter the 3 men who stand in Algirdas's path: Kutlug Bey, Haji Bey, and Dmitri. These 3 Tatar lords control the vast Podolia and the steppes north of the Black Sea. In any other era, they would be terrifying unifiers. Kutlug Bey acts as the senior commander, a man accustomed to the absolute obedience of his tumens. Haji Bey and Dmitri command their own hordes, holding the flanks, but in 1362 they are rivals first and allies second. They look at each other with as much suspicion as they look at the enemy. They squabble over tax collection rights in the Slavic villages. They fight over grazing lands. They retain their armies to protect themselves from Sarai as much as from external threats. This division breeds a fatal arrogance. To them, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania is a nuisance, not an existential threat. They view the Lithuanians as forest bandits, dangerous in the swamps perhaps, but suicidal if they step onto the open grass. The idea that a heavy cavalry force from the north could outmaneuver the masters of the steppe seems laughable. The Mongols have defeated the Teutonic Knights at Lenica. They have crushed the Hungarians at Mohi. They possess the composite bow, a weapon that can kill at 300 yards, and the tactical flexibility to encircle and annihilate slow-moving European armies. So, when scouts report dust clouds moving south from Kiev, the Khans do not panic. They see an opportunity for plunder. They believe Algirdas is walking into a trap. They imagine the Lithuanians will march in a clumsy feudal column, ripe for the slaughter. They expect to employ the feigned retreat, the classic maneuver where they ride away, draw the heavy knights out of formation, and then turn to shower them with arrows until they look like porcupines. But the fall of the Golden Horde will not begin with a grand invasion from an equal power. It begins here, with this underestimation. The Khans are fighting the last war, relying on the reputation of their ancestors. They fail to notice that Algirdas isn't bringing a traditional feudal army. He isn't bringing a crusade. He is bringing a counter-strategy specifically designed to neutralize their advantages. While Kutlug, Haji and Dmitri casually assemble their forces near the Blue Waters, treating the upcoming battle as a routine punitive expedition, they miss the critical signal. Algirdas has moved too fast. He has bypassed the outer settlements that usually provide early warning. He has denied them the time to gather the full might of the steppe. The 3 warlords gather their tumens at the river convergence, a massive sea of horses, yurts and banners. The smell of thousands of campfires fills the air. It looks impressive. It looks invincible. But it is a fragile coalition held together by pride. They are about to face a unified, singular will that has been sharpening its claws in the dark. The great troubles have done the work for Algirdas. The beast is already wounded. He just needs to deliver the killing blow, To understand the army marching south to meet the Golden Horde, you have to discard the traditional image of a medieval crusade. The men following Algirdas are not fighting for the cross. They are the last holdouts of the old gods in Europe. The Grand Duchy of Lithuania is an island of paganism in a sea of aggressive monotheism. To their west, the Teutonic Knights burn villages in the name of Christ. To their east, the Golden Horde demands submission in the name of the Khan. By all logic, Lithuania should have been crushed between these two millstones. But they survived because they mastered a weapon more potent than the sword: adaptability. Algirdas leads a force that is a terrifying hybrid of east and west. At its core are the Lithuanian elites warriors who worship Perkunas, the thunder god. They ride heavy war horses like Western knights, clad in mail and plate, but they fight with the ferocity and ambush tactics of forest tribes. They are heavy enough to smash a line, but light enough to vanish into the tree line. However, the real genius of the Grand Duchy lies not in how they fight, but in how they rule. As Algirdas pushes into the Slavic lands of what is now Ukraine, he doesn't come as a conqueror forcing a new culture upon the locals. He comes with a brilliant, simple promise: status quo. The Lithuanians operate under a famous maxim: we introduce no new customs and change no old ones. Think about how revolutionary that is for the 14th century. The Teutonic Knights want to Germanize and convert you. The Mongols want to tax you into starvation and enslave your children. But Algirdas, he tells the Orthodox princes of Ruthenia, keep your religion, keep your laws, keep your language. Just pay your taxes to Vilnius instead of Sarai, and we will protect you with our swords. It is a masterstroke of political engineering. It transforms the invasion into a liberation. As the Lithuanian army moves through the Ruthenian lands towards the Blue Waters, they are not bogged down by partisan warfare or local insurgencies. Instead, they gather strength. Local Slavic regiments, eager to throw off the Tatar yoke, join Algirdas's ranks. The army swells, becoming a coalition of the willing. You have pagan Lithuanians riding shoulder to shoulder with Orthodox Rus's soldiers. They are united not by a god, but by a common enemy. This creates a unique military dynamic. The Rus contingents bring intimate knowledge of the steppe. They have fought the Tatars for generations. They know the rhythm of the horse archers, the feints, and the signals. Algirdas integrates this intelligence into his command structure. He is not an arrogant overlord ignoring the advice of his subjects. He listens. He absorbs the military doctrines of his vassals and fuses them with the discipline of his northern guard. The force that finally approaches the edge of the wild fields is perfectly engineered to kill Mongols. It possesses the heavy shock power of European cavalry, the hammer needed to break a formation combined with the strategic patience of the Rus defenders. Algirdas knows he cannot outrun the Mongols. Their horses are faster. He cannot outshoot them. Their bows have a longer effective range in mass volleys. So he plans to do something else entirely. He plans to outdiscipline them. He intends to present a target that refuses to break, a wall of shields and spears that absorbs the arrows and waits for the precise moment when the chaotic, divided enemy makes a mistake. The last pagans are not marching to Blue Waters to die for glory. They are marching to prove that a multi-ethnic, tolerant empire can destroy a tyranny built on fear. The psychological lines are drawn. On one side, the fragmented, arrogant warlords of the Horde. On the other, a precise, unified machine led by a man who burns with a cold, sober purpose. The collision is imminent. To comprehend the magnitude of this campaign, you must look at the prize waiting at the end of the spear. Algirdas is not marching south merely to kill Tatars. He is marching to seize the ghost of an empire, Kiev. In 1362, Kiev is a shadow of its former self. 2 centuries prior, it was a metropolis that rivaled Paris and London, the glittering capital of Kievan Rus. But the Mongol invasion of 1240 changed everything. The Golden Horde didn't just conquer the city, they dismantled it. They reduced its golden domes to soot and its stone walls to rubble. For over 100 years, this once great centre of history of Ukraine has functioned as little more than a tributary outpost for the Khan. The reality of the Tatar Yoke here is brutal and bureaucratic. It isn't a constant state of war, it is a constant state of extortion. The Mongols installed officials known as baskaks, tax collectors, backed by armed guards. These men are the hated symbols of oppression. They count every head of cattle, every bushel of grain, and every able-bodied son. 10% of everything goes to the Horde. If you can't pay in silver, you pay in skin. The tithe of blood, the taking of slaves to be sold in the markets of Crimea, is the terrifying cost of doing business with the Khan. Algirdas sees this suffering, but he also sees the map. He understands that whoever controls Kiev controls the Dnieper River, and whoever controls the Dnieper holds the keys to the trade routes connecting the Baltic Sea in the north to the Black Sea in the south. This is the Amber Road reimagined. If Lithuania can secure this corridor, they will bypass the hostile Poland to the west and the chaotic Muscovy to the east. They will create a superhighway of commerce that flows directly into their pockets. The economic motivation is just as sharp as the military one. Algirdas intends to cut the financial artery of the Golden Horde, so the campaign into Ruthenia is a surgical strike against the Mongol treasury. As the Lithuanian army secures the towns north of the wild fields, they do something simple but revolutionary. They kick out the Baskaks. They stop the flow of silver to the steppe. Imagine the shockwave this sends through the Mongol command structure. For decades, the warlords Kutlug, Haji and Dmitri have treated these lands as their personal bank accounts. They rely on this tribute to pay their soldiers and maintain their power base during the civil war. Suddenly, the money stops, the grain stops, the slaves stop. Algirdas has effectively placed a siege on their wallets. He forces their hand. The three Khans can no longer ignore the forest barbarians. They cannot stay in their encampments and wait for the raiders to leave. They are being starved of the resources they need to survive the Magna Turbatio. This explains the specific location of the upcoming battle. The Khans are forced to ride north to intercept the threat before it solidifies its grip on the breadbasket of the region. They choose the staging ground at the Sini Vody, the Blue Waters, because it sits on the direct intercept course between the steppe and the rich lands of Kiev. For the people of Ruthenia, the approaching Lithuanian army represents a desperate hope. They are not looking for a new master. They are looking for a shield. The Grand Duchy offers a lower tax rate and, more importantly, protection from the slave raids. When Algirdas arrives, he finds a population ready to support him. He's not fighting in enemy territory. He's fighting on ground that wants to be liberated. The stage is now fully set. The motivation is clear: control of the Dnieper trade. The provocation is absolute: the cessation of tribute. The enemy has been lured out of their comfort zone. The golden beast, hungry and angry, is moving north to crush the insolent upstarts. Algirdas waits at the river, knowing that he has successfully turned a conquest into a defensive stand on his own terms. The summer of 1362 burns hot on the Ukrainian steppe. The location is the confluence of the Sninucha and Southern Bug rivers, a place history remembers simply as the Blue Waters. First comes the sound. Before you even see the Golden Horde, you hear them. It is a low, thrumming vibration in the earth, the pounding of tens of thousands of hooves. Then the dust cloud rises on the southern horizon, blotting out the sun. When the army of the three Khans finally crest the ridge, it looks less like a military formation and more like a moving city. Kutluk Bey, Haji Bey and Dmitri have emptied the western steppes to answer Algirdas's challenge. Their force is massive. Historical estimates vary, but they likely outnumber the Lithuanians significantly. They bring with them the cacophony of the nomadic war camp, the beating of kettle drums, the shrill whistles of commanders, and the chaotic shouting of men from a dozen different tribes. It is a spectacle designed to terrify. They want the enemy to see the sheer scale of the horde, to feel the hopelessness of the arithmetic. But when the Khans look across the river valley, they do not see an army trembling in fear. They do not see a wagon fought the traditional defensive circle Europeans used to hide from horse archers. They see lines. Grand Duke Algirdas has arranged his forces in a formation that defies the logic of steppe warfare. His army stands in absolute silence. The sunlight glints off the heavy plate armour of the Lithuanian elite and the polished shields of the Rus infantry. There are no taunts. There is no movement. Just a wall of steel waiting in the heat. For the Mongol commanders, this static discipline is confusing, perhaps even insulting. In their experience, European armies are clumsy beasts that charge blindly or cower behind walls. But Algirdas is doing neither. He is inviting them in. This visual standoff reveals the soul of the two armies. On the southern bank you have the Golden Horde in its twilight years, loud, numerically superior but internally fractured. The three Khans ride under different banners, their men segregated by clan loyalty. They are united only by greed and the desire to crush this upstart. On the northern bank you have the Grand Duchy, outnumbered but forged into a singular instrument of will. Algirdas rides the line, his face impassive. He knows the psychology of his enemy better than they know themselves. He knows that the Khans, arrogant in their numbers, will fight aggressively. They will not be cautious. They will want to end this quickly, collect the loot, and get back to their internal power struggles. The Khans signal their archers forward. The classic opening move of the steppe is about to begin. The arrow storm intended to soften the enemy lines, to provoke a foolish charge, to break the cohesion of the shield wall. The air grows heavy. The birds in the river reeds go silent. The distance between the two armies is now measured in the range of a composite bow. Algirdas tightens his grip on his sword. He has lured the dragon of the east to the exact spot he wanted. The trap is set. The talking is over. To survive a battle against the Golden Horde, you must first understand the geometry of death. The Mongol way of war is built on a single, terrifying shape. The circle. They do not charge head-on, Arj. They spread their wings, utilizing their superior speed to wrap around the enemy's flanks, surrounding them in a shrinking ring of arrows until the trapped army collapses from panic and exhaustion. Algirdas knows this. He understands that if he meets the Khans on the open, flat grass, his army will be encircled and annihilated. He needs walls. But on the vast Ukrainian steppe, there are no stone castles, so he uses the water. Look at the map of Sinivodi. Algirdas has positioned his forces with surgical precision. He anchors his flanks against the riverbanks or dense natural obstacles. By using the terrain to cover his sides, he forces the Mongols into a funnel. He denies them the space they need to perform their deadly caracole, the rotating circle of mounted archers. If they want to fight him, they have to come straight at him. But Algirdas goes further. He reinvents the standard European battle line. Most medieval armies of this era fought in a single solid block or a long thin line. Algirdas breaks his army into 6 distinct self-contained regiments. He arranges them in a concave formation, a half-moon shape facing the enemy. This is a masterstroke of medieval warfare. Why a half-moon? Because it creates a kill zone in the centre. If the Mongols charge the middle, the Lithuanian wings can close in, turning the enemy's favourite tactic of encirclement against them. Furthermore, by separating his army into independent units, Algirdas ensures that panic cannot spread like a contagion. If one unit takes heavy fire, the others remain steady. The composition of these units is equally specific. The front ranks are filled with the heavy infantry and dismounted knights of the Ruslands. These men are the anvil. They carry tall pavis shields and heavy mail, designed to absorb the kinetic energy of Mongol arrows. Behind them, hidden from the immediate view of the enemy, sit the elite Lithuanian heavy cavalry, the hammer. For the Mongol horse archers staring across the field, this presents a frustrating puzzle. Their bows, while deadly, have limitations. To penetrate heavy European plate and chainmail, they need to be close, dangerously close. Usually they would ride in, loose a volley, and ride away before the enemy could retaliate. But here, the terrain restricts their movement. The rivers squeeze them. The Lithuanian formation refuses to scatter. Algirdas has effectively transformed the open steppe into a corridor fight. He has stripped the Golden Horde of their greatest assets, speed and maneuverability. He forces the 3 Khans to play a game of brute force, a game where Lithuanian steel is heavier than Tatar arrows. The atmosphere in the Lithuanian ranks is one of suffocating tension. The men know that once the arrows start flying, they must stand their ground. To take a step back is to invite slaughter. To charge prematurely is suicide. They must trust in the geometry their Grand Duke has drawn. They must trust that the Wolf of the North has calculated the angles correctly. Because if he is wrong, the blue waters will run red before sunset. The battle begins not with a roar, but with a whistle. It is a sound that has haunted the nightmares of Europe for 3 generations, the collective shriek of thousands of composite bows releasing at once. The sky above the blue waters darkens as the first volley arcs over the steppe. For a soldier in the Lithuanian front line, this is the moment of truth. You crouch behind your shield, listening to the terrifying rhythm of the impact. Thud, thud, clang. The arrows of the Golden Horde are designed to pierce mail and flesh. They strike with the force of a hammer, but today they are meeting resistance. The heavy pavis shields of the Rus infantry and the plate armour of the Lithuanian elite are holding. Kutluk Bey and the other Khans watch from their command hill, expecting the usual result. They expect the enemy line to waver. They expect gaps to open up. But the line holds. The last pagans do not panic. When a man falls, another steps forward to fill the void, silent and grim. Seeing that the long-range bombardment isn't shattering the formation, the Khans order the next phase of Mongol tactics, the Tulugma, or the standard sweep. Waves of horse archers ride furiously toward the Lithuanian lines, loosing arrows at point-blank range, screaming war cries meant to curdle the blood, and then, just as they seem about to crash into the spears, they wheel away. This is the trap. This is how they destroyed the knights of Hungary and Poland. They want to provoke a reaction. They want the Europeans to think, they are retreating, now is our chance, and break formation to chase them. But Algirdas has drilled his men for this exact moment. He rides behind the lines, his voice cutting through the din, Stoveti. He knows that the retreat is a lie. He knows that if even one regiment breaks ranks to chase the fleeing Tatars, the trap will spring, and his army will be butchered. Imagine the discipline required. You're being shot at. Your instinct screams at you to charge the men killing your friends, but you must stand still. You must take the punishment and do nothing. It is a psychological torture test. Now shift your perspective. Look at this through the eyes of a Mongol horseman. For his entire life, warfare has followed a script. You shoot, the enemy breaks, you chase, you win. But today, the script is broken. You ride up to these forest barbarians, you scream, you shoot, and they just look at you. They stand like statues of iron. They don't chase you. They don't scatter. Confusion begins to ripple through the Mongol ranks. The horses are getting tired. The quivers are getting lighter. The Khans are becoming frustrated. Their entire way of war is predicated on the enemy's cooperation on the enemy making a mistake. But Algirdas refuses to make one. The battle drags on for hours. It becomes a grueling stalemate. The Mongols are expending massive amounts of energy for little gain. Their arrows, while deadly, are running low, and the psychological weight of the battle begins to shift. The hunter becomes unsure. The prey looks less like prey and more like a predator waiting to pounce. Algirdas watches the sun. He sees the subtle changes in the enemy's movement. The Mongol charges are becoming ragged. Their horses are foaming. The three Khans, perhaps arguing amongst themselves about why the stupid Europeans won't fight properly, are losing control of the tempo. This is the breaking of the code. Algirdas has proven that the Golden Horde is a one-trick pony. If you deny them the open field, and if you deny them the panic they feed on, they don't have a plan B. The deadly dance of the steppe has been stopped cold by a wall of northern discipline. And now that the enemy has exhausted their momentum, Algirdas prepares to unleash the kinetic energy he has been hoarding all day. The shield wall is about to open. The sun is dipping toward the western horizon. The battlefield at Blue Waters is littered with broken arrows and exhausted horses. The Golden Horde has thrown everything they have at the Lithuanian line feints, volleys, screams, threats, and nothing has worked. The Mongol warriors are tired, frustrated, and crucially, their quivers are almost empty. Algirdas sits high in his saddle, watching the rhythm of the enemy slow down. He sees the Khans hesitating, arguing among themselves on the distant hill. The moment has arrived. The Grand Duke raises his mace. Horns blast across the Lithuanian line, a deep, guttural sound distinct from the high-pitched whistles of the steppe. The shield wall, which has stood like granite for hours, suddenly shifts. The Russes' infantry step aside, opening gaps in the formation like gates opening in a dam, and through those gates pours the thunder. The elite Lithuanian heavy cavalry has been waiting impatiently behind the infantry all day. Now they are unleashed. These are not nimble steppe ponies. These are massive European destriers. bred for weight and impact, clad in mail barding. The knights riding them are encased in heavy plate. The Mongol horsemen, who just moments ago were casually riding close to the lines hoping to provoke a reaction, suddenly find themselves facing a wall of charging steel. They try to turn to use their speed to escape, but they are too close. They are trapped by the geography of the riverbanks and their own packed numbers. The collision is catastrophic. It is not a graceful duel of swords, it is a brutal equation of physics, mass times velocity. The heavy Lithuanian war horses smash into the lighter Mongol mounts, bowling them over like toys. Lance tips crunch through leather armour and silk tunics. The sheer kinetic energy of the charge shatters the front ranks of the horde instantly. For the Mongol warrior, this is a nightmare scenario. Their entire way of fighting depends on space, on keeping the enemy at arm's length. Now the enemy is right on top of them. In close quarters, their bows are useless. Their curved sabres bounce harmlessly off the thick Lithuanian plate armour. They are trapped in a crush of bodies, unable to manoeuvre, being hammered by maces and war axes. Panic, the weapon the Mongols have used so effectively against others for a century, now turns against them. The discipline of the horde evaporates. The three Khans Kutlu, Herji, and Dmitri watch in horror as their invincible Tumans dissolve into a terrified mob. The internal divisions of the Magna Turbatio resurface immediately. There is no coordinated defence, only a desperate scramble for survival. The Khans themselves realise the day is lost. They abandon their armies, turning their horses south toward the safety of the Crimea, leaving their men to be cut down. The hunters have become the hunted. The Lithuanian pursuit is ruthless, pushing the disorganised remnants of the horde into the rivers and the marshes. As evening falls over the Battle of Blue Waters, the silence returns to the steppe. But it is different now. It is the silence of total victory. The myth of Mongol invincibility, a myth that held Eastern Europe hostage for 120 years, lies broken in the mud of the Sinivodi, trampled under the hooves of Algirdas's heavy cavalry. The gamble has paid off. The door to the south is wide open. The aftermath of the Battle of Blue Waters is not just a military victory, it is a geopolitical landslide. As the dust settles on the banks of the Sinivodi, the myth of the Golden Horde lies shattered. The three Khans Kutlu, Haji, and Dmitri vanish into the steppes, their power broken, their reputations destroyed. They leave behind not just their dead, but the keys to an entire civilization. Algirdas wastes no time. He understands momentum. He marches his victorious army straight to Kiev. Imagine the scene at the gates of the ancient capital. For over 100 years, since the catastrophic Mongol siege of 1240, Kiev has lived in fear. Its people have watched the horizon, dreading the dust clouds that signalled the arrival of the tax collectors. But today, the army approaching does not carry the horsetail banners of the Khan. They carry the Vites, the White Knight of Lithuania. There is no siege. There is no starving out the defenders. The gates of Kiev swing open. The local princes and the Orthodox clergy welcome Algirdas not as a conqueror, but as a deliverer. This validates his grand strategy of tolerance. By respecting the local religion and customs, he effectively walks into the most important city in Eastern Europe without shedding a drop of blood. He replaces the Mongol Baskaks with his own son, Vladimir, establishing a dynasty that blends Lithuanian strength with Ruthenian tradition. The Tatar Yoke over the heart of Ukraine is snapped. The consequences of this moment ripple outward with terrifying speed. With Kiev secured, the dominoes fall. Podolia, Chernihiv, and the vast tracts of the Dnieper basin pledge allegiance to Vilnius. Almost overnight, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania transforms. It ceases to be merely a Baltic forest state and becomes the largest nation in Europe. Look at the map after 1362. It is breathtaking. The Grand Duchy stretches from the freezing waters of the Baltic Sea in the north almost to the warm currents of the Black Sea in the south. It creates a massive buffer zone, a shield that protects Central Europe from the chaos of the east. For the Golden Horde, the loss is catastrophic. The Magna Turbatio deepens. Deprived of the taxes and grain from the rich Slavic lands, the Khans turn on each other with even greater ferocity, fighting over the scraps of a shrinking empire. The Blue Waters' defeat exposes their weakness to the world. It signals to other vassal states, most notably the rising Principality of Moscow, that the Mongol masters bleed just like anyone else. Algirdas has achieved the impossible. He has beaten the superpower of the age on its own terrain. He has united pagan and Christian under one banner. And he has done so with a cold, calculating brilliance that reshaped history of Ukraine forever. The Wolf of the North now stands atop the hill, looking down at an empire that spans horizons, proving that in the Game of Thrones, silence and discipline are deadlier than noise and fury. If you open a standard history textbook, you will often read that the Tatar Yoke was broken by the Russian Prince Dmitry Donskoy at the Battle of Kulikovo in 1380. That battle is legendary. It is celebrated in paintings, poems, and national holidays. But there is an uncomfortable truth hiding in the margins. Kulikovo happened 18 years after the Battle of Blue Waters, and while Kulikovo was a symbolic victory, the Mongols returned 2 years later